Okay, commissioners, please take your seats. I'd like to call the Public Services meeting to order. Would Commissioner Brown lead us in the pledge? Thank you, Don. Need a motion to adopt the agenda. Moved by Leonetti, supported by Duje. All in favor, please vote. Motion passes for the agenda. Need a motion for the minutes. Moved by Leon, supported by Marv. Please vote. Item passes. The minutes. Public participation. Anyone from the public? Seeing no one to the public, of the public, we'll go into 6 department recommendations. A, it's a contract body construction 27-mile road culvert over Yates Drain Bridge, $550,000. Brian, can I get a motion first for this?
Motion for A through F.
Sure. Moved by Leon, supported by Lucido, A through F. And I guess we'll take questions on any of these, but we'll let Brian just give us a quick rundown.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Yates Drain is in Washington Township. It's on 27-mile road crossing. I believe it's between Jewel and Shaner. And that's a local agency project to replace the structure out there. And yes, it'd be approval of the contract for that project in the amount as stated.
Okay, so on the list, Commissioner Brown.
The township. Good afternoon, Brian. Is the township participating in this then? What percentage are they?
In this one, no, it is not. There are certain ones that we coordinate with the townships upon their requests and our coordination with them. This is one we looked at as far as a need. We had some funding to provide for the replacement of the structure due to the deterioration that we've seen over time. So this is 100% local.
It's been a long Mennonite problem, so I'm glad you're doing that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Leon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just out of curiosity, what is the Mumble Strip program and where will these be established?
The Mumble Strip program is through our Traffic Operations Center. We did a project this past year. It's safety dollars from the CMAQ funding. So it's a program that we did 50 miles this past season, and it's for more of our rural roadways, mostly in the northern section of the county. And it's to provide safer, I guess, warning system for travelers that might potentially cross the center line in those locations. And it obviously gives a warning. It's different than a, quote, rumble strip because it's a sinusoidal installation that is definitely a warning that the driver can hear. However, it's not as loud exteriorly for residential or people to hear from the outside. So it's a softer tone outside of the vehicle, but it still warns the driver upon crossing the center line. It's for safety purposes.
It's not on the edges of the road, it's more in the center of the road?
Center line, yes, correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
When the wagons go down there.
Chair Smith?
No.
You-
I was gonna ask about the mumble strip.
Any other questions or comments for any of the items A through F? Just raise your hand because I'm not sure if the computer's working right. Seeing no questions, please vote A through F. Thanks, Brian.
Great, thank you.
Motion passes. Okay, item 7 is a resolution I put forward here. Thanks for helping me out on that, Crystal. Is to support House Bill 4324. Right now, earned income tax credit is at 6%. They're looking to increase it for 12%. So I'll accept any motions, questions, or comments on this. Sure. Go ahead, Romano.
Thank you, Commissioner. You know, as in the past, when something like this comes up, and I say it respectfully, I don't like surprises. This is a surprise. I'd like to know more about it before I vote on it.
Okay.
So I just giving you a heads up.
Okay. Any other, I'm sorry, go ahead, Bob.
So can you give us a general explanation from your side of this on what it actually means?
I mean, you look here in the resolution, it's pretty crystal clear. You know, they reduced it to 6% by 2011, and they're looking to increase it. And every dollar brought into the community through this increase is about 1.5 in new economic development. Crystal helped me out with this. Is there anything you want to add, Crystal, at all?
It was 10% in 2009, and then it went up to
Right.
20% in 2012. Then it was reduced to 6% in 19. And then they want to increase it to 12%. So if you look at the history of it, it used to be a lot higher than even where they want it to be. From what I have researched, that was their negotiating number to meet in the middle somewhere,
So why did they reduce it?
to balance the budget that year.
Okay, Commissioner Kleinfeld?
Thank you, Chair. A couple of things. The first is, do we know what it was before 2009? Because 2009 was when the crash occurred. And when Commissioner Mosseri was here, we had a resolution that had to do with food stamps and WIC, and it was to keep them at their current levels. And my position at that time was, wait a minute, we had this housing market crash, and a whole lot of people had to go on the system that weren't on the system before. Why do we want to keep it that way, that many people are in need? Why is that our goal? Why do we not want to get back down to the levels that it was before everything went up? In this situation, my issue is this, and I raised it with Phil. I keep raising it over and over again. When we do resolutions, in my opinion, at the table as a body, we should be doing resolutions that affect counties, that specifically affect counties and our role in counties and how we struggle to balance the budget and things like that. We're getting in the business of sending resolutions to, and we did it before, years ago, if you remember. We had a resolution every year on the Constitution, and half of the body voted against it. Some senior members of the commission will remember that. I think, number one, we dilute our voice when we're just doing it on everything. I'm not happy about Phil's. I'm not happy about this. I want to get back. I think this is, I agree with you, by the way. I agree with you on the issue, and I think it's important. And I think this kind of advocacy we should do as individual elected officials representing our residents. But as an official body, I'd like to get back to resolutions that affect the county that we all agree on, rather than resolutions that are meant to make people choose sides. The Second Amendment one, I'm not against the Second Amendment, but I am none too happy with Phil for putting it forward, and he knows that. So if I'm forced to vote on it, I'll probably vote yes because I agree with the issue. But I don't know. I might vote no because I disagree with that this is our job. So I don't know what to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ha.
Thank you, Chair. That's a tough act to follow. One thing, when we had these up in Lansing, we had a fiscal analysis cost impact associated with the resolution. Do we have anything like that available?
I don't think we do. Do we have anything, Crystal?
I don't have that.
Yeah.
Well, how can we vote on something where we don't know what the fiscal impact is going to be? Just thought. And yesterday, for those of us that were here at 2 o'clock, we were having a, supposed to be 2:30, but nevertheless, we were kind of just having a round table discussion about exactly, and Veronica wasn't there, to her credit, exactly what she just said. When we're looking at these types of resolutions, having received these up in Lansing, what I'm looking for is the impact on Macomb County I jokingly said to one of my colleagues yesterday, what's our policy? And Bob said, we don't have one. It's up, correct? It's up to the individual commissioners to put up whatever resolutions they want. And I said, well, then why don't we put up one to impeach Donald Trump? Just joking, Don, using it as an analogy. If it's not impacting the county specifically, aren't we getting outside of our lanes, especially when we're looking at sending it to the state Senate Majority Leader? Anybody know what his name is? Thanks. His name's Mike Shirkey. He was the advocate of right to work. That was his bill. He's the one that pushed. You didn't count. You weren't supposed to answer that. So we can send these to Mike Shirkey all we want. I can tell you exactly where they're going to go. So who are we talking to? Are we talking to the Republicans? Are we talking to the Democrats? Or are we talking to everybody? So I support the idea. I was there when they voted it to reduce it, and it was a straight party line vote. And it'll continue to be a straight party line vote, even with different members up there. So we talked yesterday, just roundtable discussion, about how do we want to do these in the future. Let's be realistic here. We're in the middle of a campaign season. We're all up. Anybody votes against this, I got to tell you, you're going to get a hit from the Democratic side, not the Republican side. Same thing with Phil's resolution. We had a room full of people here advocating positions that we don't control. I'm going through this in Roseville right now. The Sacred Heart Church is going to be demolished. People are in an uproar. They've got over 10,000 Facebook comments. Why didn't the city do something? Why didn't something happen? You know who owns the church? The Archdiocese. You know who sold the church? The Archdiocese. So the city has nothing there. So now they're starting a petition drive and a resolution drive to force the council to spend $2.2 million to buy the church. Nobody has even addressed the $2.8 million it takes to bring it up to code. So that's what I'm saying. When we get outside of our lane here, we're really making political statements, and I've heard our chairman say this 100 times, maybe not 100. We're mostly a nonpartisan group here. We function as a Macomb County delegation representing Macomb County. We all have different views on different subjects, agree 80% of the time, probably never going to agree on the other 20. That was the principle we used up in Lansing. So I think we need some type of policy on what we do with resolutions in the future. So like Bob said, anybody can put anything up at any time that they want. So I guess you'll know what my next one will be. Thanks.
Okay, Commissioner Smith, Chair Smith, and then Lee. Next.
So I was part of the round table. Was there 4 of us here a little early for the meeting yesterday? I thought I remembered putting you and Leon in charge of the new committee on coming up with an ordinance or a resolution policy, because you're right, we don't have one, and it's been kind of a gentleman's agreement. I mean, at least in the last 4 years, probably, that no one was really bringing up something that was generally a partisan issue, right? Because we've been trying to stay away from it, and not saying that you can't, and we all know how that they're going to probably go down, party lines. I agree with you about the finance impact on this, because, the financial impact in this, in a way, this does affect Macomb County because it impacts a bunch of our residents, right? I'm not saying it's something that we should necessarily have on here, but it does have a little bit more of an impact, at least financially, on our residents than the Second Amendment, which I also agree with the Second Amendment, right? But it's, so we're coming up with a policy, though, where how much does it have to affect our members or our constituents, and how does it have to affect them before we decide we should weigh in on it? I mean, that's trying to write that rule is going to be awful tough. I liked where we were going for a long time without generally bringing these things up, because we do know how it's going to go. It's going to go 8 to 6, I think, or whatever the numbers work out here, 8 to 5. Yes, there's 8 to. Crystal's voting now. Yep. So, and we just told you what she was by doing that. But back to this, if we are going to look at it, I do want to say that when it talks about $1 brought into a community generates 1.67, how many families benefit, the number that they're benefiting. We've all seen different. I mean, you get 2 lawyers in a room, and the same law has 2 different meanings, just like numbers. So, one thing we've done with like the Sierra Club and the farmers with their, we've always brought somebody in to kind of explain this and maybe have the opposite side. So at least, even though I probably know where I'm voting on this, I want to hear the opposite side of this and why, I'm going to get hammered on the opposite side of this. And maybe it changes some people's minds. And I'm not sure. I certainly agree with this in principle. But I'd like it if Commissioner Majek wouldn't mind getting a few people in that might be able to give us, a view of this.
Okay,
I mean,
we'll take
because
a
it
look
seems
into
like it's kind of a big money item, and it does affect the poor, the less fortunate in our community. So I want to hear how it does this and what the premise of it
Okay.
is.
Thank you. Next on the list, Commissioner Leonetti.
Let me just say that with these resolutions, I think the most effective way is if we're unanimous, right? I mean, so if other words, if our body says unanimously we support this, then it might have a greater impact on the people that we send this to. So I think, and the other thing too is, if we're going to do resolutions, what's wrong with calling each other up and saying, hey, I got this idea, I've been working with Crystal, what do you think? Get a little lobbying going on even amongst ourselves. And then maybe we can get these resolutions to be, in fact, unanimous. I mean, when we wanted the F1, make sure I get it right, F-35s, we were unanimous, I think, along with everybody else. That's a more effective resolution than something that might be going through the legislature up in Lansing. So I do agree with a lot of the comments here. I will, though, unless there's other people that want to talk, I'd put it to motion now, or if Commissioner Majek wants to hold off until later.
I can't accept the motion now because you already spoke, but if you spoke on the second round. So.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Drollet?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I concur with a lot of what everybody already said. Just want to bring up one other point, and that is, while this resolution is about a topic that a fair number of people have some understanding of, not all resolutions dealing with state legislation or federal legislation we have a full understanding of. And oftentimes, the reason why a bill in Lansing has multiple hearings with people coming to testify from all kinds of organizations and all kinds of perspectives is so that the lawmakers have the fullest sense, along with economic impacts, of what the impact might be. Now, this is a little bit less that, and same perhaps the Second Amendment, but I'm just worried in general about being asked to vote on a bill that I'm not even sure exactly what the level of this bill does with the earned income tax credit. How much does it increase? Does it phase it in? Is it immediate? Which salary levels are affected by it? Shouldn't we know those things before we say we support a bill that we don't even know really what the content is? We know the gist of it. But do we know maybe somebody supports an earned income tax credit for people up to $25,000 a year, but not for people up to $50,000 a year? Which is this bill deal with? So I just think that I realize that we are people who are in politics because we have strongly held beliefs and views, and I think that we need to find ways. I agree with some of my colleagues of expressing those as individuals, and when we bring things before the board, I'm always a little hesitant to be using the board as a way for me to get a point across for myself politically, unless it's dealing with the county. I brought a resolution dealing with regional transit, because I felt that dealt with the county. But if it's something else, I think we should be just careful about it. So I echo many of the thoughts of my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Brown?
Thank you. I won't repeat all the comments that I agreed with because I agree with almost everything that everyone said so far. But I did text a friend of mine up in Lansing and said this bill's been sitting around for almost a year and we're probably never going to be taken up. So just FYI. Thank you.
Okay. Any other speakers on this? And I guess it dies for lack of support. So we'll go on to, I'm sorry?
It's- If you want me to, you're the,
You're the commissioner, so go ahead.
I don't want to put people on the spot, you know what I mean? Well, I guess I'll make a motion. We'll see where it goes.
Okay, so it's moved, Leonetti, is there support for that?
Motion to do what?
To support this resolution?
Or you're moving it to full board.
Is there a second for that?
That's tomorrow, though.
Okay, so seeing no support dies of lack of support, okay. So, we'll go on to item number 8, correspondence. Need to receive and file for items A through F. Moved and supported, all in favor, please vote. Any new business, commissioners? New business, Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Thank you, Chair. First, just keep in mind that there's nothing that precludes a chair from seconding a motion, or even making one if nobody else puts it out, if the chair puts something on the agenda, just to keep that in mind. There's nothing that precludes the chair from seconding a motion, or even making a motion, especially if they put something on the agenda. Just wanted that out there in case there are chairs that didn't know it. So my meeting yesterday with the treasurers, the clerks, and the Register of Deeds, we were hit with several bills that affect all of those entities and affect counties, and then went through, and on the ones that we couldn't agree with each other, okay, we're going to set that aside. We're not going to work on that together. And then the ones that we could agree with each other, they're coordinating with each other. Next week, we meet with the prosecutors and the sheriffs, and it's the leaders of all of their organizations. The 4-year terms came up. The countywides are adamant that it be on a presidential year. They do not want any county commissioner to have a safe seat to make a run at them, and they stand firm on that. My understanding is the governor stands firm that it not be on that it be on the governor's. Now, I'm not sure what her rationale is, because I don't think a county commissioner is going to suddenly take on a governor or something like that. So we could not agree to take a position, all the county-wides, along with the Michigan Association of Counties that represent county commissioners. We're going to have to part ways on this one. It is stuck, and our staff, who represents us, said if commissioners want 4-year terms, commissioners have to lobby for it, otherwise it's just not going to move. So all the other stuff I'm not going to get into. A lot of it was really detailed, and some of it was even really hard for me to wrap my mind around. So that's all I have. And then once again, next week I meet with the prosecutors and the sheriffs. And if there's any bills that I think are really important, I'll pass them on to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kleinfeld. Commissioner Hall?
Chair, question. Lobby who?
The legislators.
Which one?
You know, honestly, our position is we don't care whether it's, we don't care which, we've taken an official position. We don't care if it's on a governor election, and we don't care if it's on a presidential. We just want it up there, and we want to get it done. So I would lobby everybody and say, listen, we don't care. We just want to get it done if you want to get it done.
Thank you.
Should we do a resolution, or?
Commissioner Leonetti?
We got an important decision again coming up with the jail, to remind everybody. I know some of you have already met with the executive and the sheriff. Today, I went to the 26-mile Macomb Correctional Facility, which is part of the Michigan Department of Corrections, for the community meeting. A couple of things to note there. Macomb's Community Correctional Facility has quite a high population of inmates that have mental health problems, and so it's a pretty looked at facility in the sense, because we realize nowadays that mental health issues are a lot of the issues that we have, and that's one of the things that we're looking at here with our new jail. Also, we had Barb from our pretrial services there. She was part of it, and I talked to her a little bit today. I said, you know, what do you think here with this new plan? Some of you may have seen it. I haven't seen it yet. But she says, Rob, whatever you do, she says, talk to the commissioners and let them know it's important that we focus in on mental health and then even pretrial services. She's part of pretrial service, she says, but it's really important that we get a mental health facility at that jail because we've got 12 to 14 deputies over at the hospital every week, and that's just costing us a ton of money. So just something to think about. A couple other statistics from the Macomb community or Macomb Correctional Facility. Overall, recidivism in Michigan is really good. I mean, we're at something like 24%. So a lot of inmates come out and they don't go back, and that's a good thing. They have, just to remind you, some of you, there's the Polar Bear Swim that's going to be occurring at Mac and Ray's. That's a fundraiser that they do. And other than that, the big key getaway I got for us in making our decision is whatever we do, whatever plan that's presented to us, it better focus on mental health because that seems to be the big drain that we have. That's also the drain they have. Okay, nothing further. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? Chair Smith?
Thank you. No one asked yesterday, but I heard Commissioner Kleinfeld talking about the meeting changes that we voted on yesterday, and most of those, if not all of those, were based on Steve Schmiegel's availability for the quarterly reports. So in case you were wondering why we approved those meeting changes.
Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Sauger.
Yeah, in regards to that correctional facility, there's no room at the end. People keep saying we should try to get some room over there if we get overcrowded at this jail. That'll help us. I know of people working up there, and the bottom line is there's no room at the end up there. They're crowded. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other new business? Commissioner Raimondo?
Thank you, Commissioner Majek. I had the unpleasant experience of going down to the VA yesterday. I'm waiting on Ms. Rios to come in here to explain that to her, but she's giving out some information that's really not accurate, and unfortunately I was a blunt of that information. Mr. Sauger was kind enough to go down there, take me down there I should say, but it just didn't work out. So before you send anybody down to the VA based on what she's telling us, I think we ought to have a second look at it. And going one step further here, forget about that one, let's go to the next one. For those that it involves, Innovate Mound, the repairing and, I shouldn't say repairing, the replacing of Mound Road. Next week, Tuesday, at the UAW Hall across from Ford Motor Company, they're going to have a whole big presentation on it. So I know it only affects some of the commissioners here, but I think it'd be wise if it's in your district to be there. This way you can explain at either a council meeting or a senior meeting exactly what's going on with Mound, and you're not kept out of the loop, so to speak. That's all I have. Thanks, Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Any other new business, commissioners? Seeing none, public participation, no one from the public. Move to adjournment. Moved by Drollet, supported by Duje. Please vote. And we have a meeting tomorrow. No, that was 6 minutes. We had that meeting yesterday.